Okay, so I prepped the block, cleaned off the surface really well, cleaned the engine bay a little bit around so I could get to everything. Actually removed the radiator because I'm going to clean that up and go through it. So we start with the reassembly, and it starts with the head gasket. The new head gasket, make sure you put it the correct way. It only goes on one way. You can see the little brass or copper jacket there that goes on that hole there, which is like the oil cinder, I believe. So we're gonna put it onto those studs, and the gasket goes on, and we're just making sure all the ports and everything are aligned, and that looks good. So now I'm just gonna go grab the head. And what I actually have is a new head, or a newly remanufactured head. That way, if you remember, the reason I pulled this off is the car was smoking really badly. Sometimes it seemed like it was coolant, sometimes it seemed like it was oil. So if it was coolant, that could definitely be from the head gasket, and I believe there was leakage over here in this area. And then oil, I believe, a really common cause with oil, and we saw that the valve spring was being impeded by that washer on piston 3 here. And one of the things that could let the oil in are bad valve stem seals. So it's the seal on the top side of the valve that prevents oil from leaking down onto the valves. Basically, when you pull a head off, you should really be checking it to make sure it's straight, right? And then you're making sure the valves aren't bent and that the guides and the seals are good. And I ended up finding a head that was ready to go. So instead of sending my head to a machine shop, I'm just swapping over to the one I found. So here's the replacement head. I have the tappets just sitting on the valves because those are the valves they came off. This was the order they came off of on the other head, and I just did that to kind of preserve the order. Still gonna have to re-shim everything, most likely. And then I have the head bolts in the holes too, but same thing. It was just to keep the sequence. It's sitting on now. Is a couple things with this head that are going to be a little different. I've plugged the emissions ports, so they're plugged, so I don't have to put that like log with those little runners to the head. I've already swapped the coolant temperature sensor. I have to put a thermostat on, obviously, and this little guy, the old one stuck out straight. This one has a bend to it. So I may either just have to run the hose. It has to connect to here. I don't think I'm going to cut it because I could cut it maybe and put the hose on here, but I'm going to try just running a bend in the hose. So I wonder if the bend is for a X19 rather than a 128 specifically. We're on. Now I'm going to just put the hardware back on. Tighten these up, and then we'll get the torque wrench on. So I popped the head on to mock up the thermostat to, in my last video, kind of put in this aluminum radiator. So now I'm going to finish the top end. I'm going to torque down the head bolts. I already did it once. It's done in 2 stages. I did that. I did the first already. I will do the second now. I installed new plugs and wires. And then we'll do the intake and exhaust manifolds. The other thing is I took a marker and I just wrote down the tightening sequence right onto the head for each bolt. So it starts in the middle. Here's number 1. So now I'm going to start with the exhaust manifold, but here's the gasket for the cam box. And I'm going to install the studs into the side of the head, which are used to mount the exhaust and the intake manifolds. The studs, there's 7 different studs, and they're 3 or 4 different lengths. So it's important to put the ones in the correct location. The other things is the studs are threaded on both sides. The short thread is the one that goes into the head. So the longest stud is the center stud. The next longest pair are right here, our flank, either side of the center stud. So it's here. And here. The next shortest set are on the bottom, are the ones on the far out bottom. So here, way out here. And then the shortest pair are the top end studs here. So with the studs started, the way I get them into the rest of the block is I take a nut, start it on, and then take a second nut, start that on until it jams up against the first one. And then take a socket and start tightening. And then you should be able to back off the first one and the second one. You can see that one's now fully seated. So I'm going to do that for all of them, just to make sure they're all seated all the way in. Okay, studs are all the way in. Now we have the new gaskets. Gaskets on, so now we'll start with the exhaust manifold. Kind of got to go on straight. So I can actually take the down pipe here, reconnect it. Manifold. There. So it took a little persuading, but it's there. So now, hardware. So the intake manifold and exhaust manifold are on and tight, and we can move on. So I'm ready to install the cam box. So I put the gasket on, and I actually put some RTV on it because I don't trust just that really thin paper gasket. I also put oil on the top of the valves. So I have the cam box here. I have the tappet covers in the box, and so I have to carefully plop it on and make sure they all sit on top of their valves. Just making sure they're all aligned. You want the little notch on each of these facing the front of the engine. Well, there's two, so one in the front and the back, so it makes it easier when you have to adjust the shims. And I replaced the damaged tappet cover, which was this one here. One thing you're going to notice is there's a new pulley on here, camshaft pulley. There's an alloy one because I may or may have not put in a hotter camshaft into the head, which I will show at a later date. So I'm just going to carefully try to get this on here without dropping any of the tappet covers. There it is. So I'm going to drop the bolts in, bolt it down, and then clean up all the RTV. I made a mess. I got some on the wires, some sticking out over there. So then I'll clean that all up. So I'm actually going to replace and put the OEM pulley on again because I feel like the cam isn't sitting into the recess in the back of the pulley correctly on the aftermarket one. So I'll deal with that at a later date. So I'm going to go back with the OEM one. Before I do that, I'm going to put the pointer. And I need to reinstall this because the little timing pointer is right here. Okay, valve cover. I'm not going to bolt this down yet because I may need to be able to see the valves when I'm doing the timing. I think we're ready to put the carburetor back on. So there's a gasket underneath. I reconnected the all those connectors. So once the carb was on, I basically did a whole bunch of things off camera. I installed an electric fan, which I think I'll detail in another video. I filled it with coolant. I did not bleed all the air out yet. I'll do that once it's running. I installed reconnected the ignition again and set the initial timing. Again, I'll do that in a separate video too on how to time one of these, but I just did the initial timing, hooked up all the lines, all the wires, all the fuel lines, the coolant lines that go to the intake and to the carb and all that stuff. So it's basically should be ready to start. I had a whole bunch of issues with the ignition. I actually tried to start it already and it wouldn't start, but it was more of I wasn't getting spark, and it was kind of a pain to troubleshoot because of course I replaced everything, the plugs, the wires, the coil. I had one sitting around, and you know, the condenser. So I kind of scientific method kind of had to go through everything one by one. It was ended up being the points. The points weren't actually opening and closing properly, because there was one of the screws that held them in was missing, but I had it on another distributor, so I was able to take that screw, put it in, and we're good to go. So it should be ready to start. Here it is running. We got the new cylinder head. Rev it.